Yeah, just the whole calligraphy thing I think is fabulous, and it's kind of a I don't know. It's definitely a dying art, if not dead. It's gone from composers, but that used to be.
Right.
That was like one of the instructions that I had. Like one of my teachers was just like, spend a day, you know, you know, making notes and making
Right.
it look good so somebody could read it. This is and that is nothing compared to just like you know calligraphy. It's just. But so did you? So what came first, writing, or the calligraphy, or
Or music. Oh God.
yeah, like writing music. Sorry, yeah,
Or writing. Yeah, writing music or writing text. It's really hard to kind of point out. I mean, a million years ago, I was really torn. I mean, music was really my first love, and there were all these things that came along the way. Science was really attractive. Astrophysics is really great, right?
right,
Space, and of course art. And the thing with and art with a lowercase a, meaning all of the arts, really.
right,
Because I just kind of felt like, um, certainly, in order to discover anything in science, there needs to be some art. There has to be a leap of faith. There has to be like, I just think, this kind of spark. And it does, and it doesn't mean that it's always right, but if we look at those great discoveries, there is that aha eureka moment. And the opposite is true. I always felt like art is what you can do with science. Like, what's the point of science? To do something with it. Put it together in a way that's meaningful for human beings, and it's kind of a gift to others, especially if you've been moved by any art. You want to, at least I want to contribute to the canon. I want to say thank you and give back in a way and try to lead. And for me, that's my legacy. But I just feel like what's most important for me is to try to leave some kind of artistic legacy. And in answer to your question, I'm sorry, maybe you need a pad to write this down. But they kind of evolved. I can't say that there was anything causal or that one preceded the other per se. I just turned 16, and I was collecting and reading vintage magazines from like the turn of the century, from like
okay,
Saturday Evening Posts in particular from like 1900 to like 1930, and National Geographics, from about the same period, the teens and a little later, and they had all these ads for consumer products that were new. That was a new thing. People didn't buy stuff. It was not an aspirational society yet, And one of the things that people aspired to get were fountain pens, right? This
right,
is something that it was big, 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 big business. That was the laptop / tablet / smartphone market.
Right.
of the day in a lot of ways, because I mean, you had to bring your portable set. Like if you did business and you were signing a contract, you had to bring like a small desk and a an ink pot, a little inkwell, with a cap on it, and you had your dip pen, and even that was an innovation. The metal nib was an innovation, because before that, of course, you had to cut your own quill, and it was a giant. You can teach it, but it's one of those things where you really just have to do it for a long time to really know how to do it right.
Right. Like anyway, you become skilled at making a nib.
Yeah, literally at making a pen. That's what your pen knife was for. Was to make a pen. So when the fountain pen came up, because that had been a dream for a lot of people for hundreds of years. Wouldn't that be great if it contained its own ink? You didn't have to keep dipping the damn thing, and you could bring it wherever you want. So the Americans really got that down.
Right.
So you're reading these ads for the Parker Duofold. It's like pressureless writing. So they put the pen like in your hand. I can't even do this in the web of your.
Right.
You put the pen like right here.
Yeah.
Right. Just resting, and you just drag it on the page, and it would write. And I'm like, really? All right, put your money where your mouth is. And I saw these ads for Waterman's in the the earlier Saturday Evening Posts. This is the greatest pen on earth. That's why we have, that's why we have offices in Paris, London, I think it's Montreal,
right,
New York. It's like, really, it's this mega corporation. It's ridiculous. And Schaefer was the new kid on the block, and they had their fancy celluloids and all this stuff. And I was like, all right. So I went to I lived at the time one town away from the antiques capital of the world. Woodbury, Connecticut is known for its antiques and has been. And they every Saturday had a flea market called the Teak Mart. And, you could find anything you wanted there, and this is the 80s. So this cool stuff from the 20s it was old stuff that you found in grandma's attic. Right. Kind of thing. I mean? So I was like ahead of the curve in that respect. To me, it was just old enough. That period I find fascinating. It's just old enough that, it seems like just a really long time ago. I mean, it really does, But at the same time, you can relate to it. They're like, oh, I think we talked about this a bit. They had movies and cars and phones, and you could buy a fan. This is getting back to that aspirational thing and consumer culture and making stuff and advertising it in magazines, right? So I said, put your money where your mouth is. I'll get a Parker Duofold Junior, maybe. Let's do that or something and buy it. So anyway, I went to the Teak Mart. I found one for $20, 1928 Parker Duofold Junior in jade, and brought it to the. You could still go to like a stationery store back then, like they existed. Right. And you could buy, a fountain pen and ink. You could get your pen repaired, no problem, right? So they did. They cleaned it out. They put a new sack in it. $20 later, I'm all set, right? There was nothing weird about it to them either. They weren't like, "Oh my God, this pen is so old." They were like, they saw that. They saw people come in with 60-year-old pens, and this case it was only like 55 years old, something like that. So anyway, I tried it out. I tried that little writing. I wonder if this thing can actually write with no pressure. It did. I was like, what? Why does that work? How does that? You can't do that with a ballpoint, right? That's the thing about ballpoints is you wear out your hand in about 30 seconds because it requires so much pressure to get a satisfying line. Right. And you're in high school, and what are you doing? You're taking notes all day, so your hand is literally cramped all day. Yeah. And so I was like, this is amazing. And not only that, but it was chubby, so it was a very relaxed grip. So, and it looks great, and it's got a 14 karat gold nib. So it's just screaming quality. And the thing was really lightweight, which was really shocking. So here's this big chunky pen with a gold nib, and it's very lightweight, and it requires no pressure to write. I'm like, I could write forever. And the point I was trying to make with that whole convoluted long story about discovering how great fountain pens are is that it was the next step in realizing that you could have a pen ultimately that has a flexible nib that would allow you to do calligraphical work. Calligraphy is very much about very regular form. I did a whole video about this, in fact, but it's very much about doing really regulating the forms. Everything is evenly spaced. It's got the exact same height. At this, at this position, it's that wide. At this position, it's that wide. And you get paid to render other people's thoughts and ideas and words, and you just make them look nice. And in the 21st century, especially, to me, that feels like something that you can do at home with software. You know what I mean? I'm a bit of the clicks and cuts microsound version of calligraphy, where it's a person writing. It's not, this is a person writing something. I don't know if you've ever seen F. Scott Fitzgerald's handwriting.
I have.
From like the teens and 20s. Oh my God, I'm amazed that you have. Perfect example of what I'm talking about. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't irregular, but at its best, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. First of all, one of my favorite writers ever. I mean, it's amazing. But to look at that writing, that's really personal. That's his writing. That's the way F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote it. Nobody else wrote like that. And, it's in his hand, and it's very pretty. And it's got the line variation and all of that stuff that you look for in calligraphy. And that's calligraphy with a lowercase c, meaning just literally beautiful writing.
Right. And
that I love. The getting paid to do wedding invitations and stuff like that, that feels like being in a cover band to me. Broader history of writing and of leaving a mark, and of how pens and fountain pens were such an important part of people's lives. That's how treaties were signed. Right. That's how love letters and poetry were written, books, novels, great novels, and things like that. That interests me.
What's that, Soap Radio?
I like markers.
The person or the implement?
Well, I like both.
I like people who mark.
Well, we all mark. We are like boats leaving a wake across the substrate of existence.
I like fountain pens.
I like music.
Marks, marks, and more marks.
Even the space between the marks is marks.
You can't get rid of a mark either, because it's just another kind of a mark that's left.
Phone Todd. He's very insightful about music and fountain pens.
Hello, Adam Farrington.
Tell you what I'm talking about. I really like Snow Train.
Do you?
Yes, to me it's very linear and relates to these fountain pens.
Well, yeah, the linear component, I suppose, makes sense, doesn't it, right? It's all about a line and making loops with it and so on.
Tell us more.
Yeah, more.
It's kind of like working with modules or cells, and you just kind of move them around a little bit, almost like musical Lego blocks or something. And you just kind of put the pieces together, and what do you know? You've got a big structural piece that's got counterpoint and rhythm and harmony and all sorts of happy, fun stuff in it. But yeah, I agree with you about the linearity. In fact, I named it after I had written the piece. Because I was just like, oh, what is this? I'm like, well, it was, I was trying to write a piece celebrating the season, celebrating Christmas and snowfall and the winter time, that whole period. Saturnalia, whatever you want to call it.
That's very interesting.
Can you play Snow Train now, please?
when people refer to fountain pens as tools, I get really upset. It's not a tool. A tool is a hammer. Okay, it's an instrument. It's much finer than that. It's a writing instrument. It's not a tool. Okay, it's like a harpsichord. It's like a guitar. It's like a violin. And when and the care that went into the making of these things is amazing. It's a beautiful bridging of science and technology and machining and hand finishing work. Every single one of those nibs is different. It's fascinating. I have friends who have 6,000 fountain pens each, and they're unbelievable. And every single nib is different. Every one. And that's why they have thousands of them. I mean, it's incredible.
Wow.
Every single one of these things writes differently. It's like driving a car. It's like driving a Porsche 356. You can feel the road. How does it handle? You can literally feel the paper. With a good nib, you can actually feel the surface of the paper in the pen. It's transferred through the nib if it's a flexible nib. And that's amazing to me. And it tells you how it wants to be used. I've approached every instrument that I've played badly, or not badly, but with limited technique. The same way, even a piano, every piano feels different. I mean, you go to somebody else's piano and you get nervous and shy and weird. Suddenly you can't play because it feels different. You get used to yours,